Hello and welcome. This is Greg DeVries from BTB Capital, and I wanted to introduce you to our Factoring Broker program today and explain to you why Business to Business Capital Corp may be a good partner for your factoring broker business. First of all, I'll tell you a little bit about who we are and why you might want to consider partnering with us. We've been in the business for just about 9 years now, going on to our 10th year. We were founded by an experienced entrepreneur, myself. I owned a software company and I was a consumer or a user of factoring, so I saw the benefit directly, and it helps me do consultative selling, and also one experienced factoring professional, Christine Barney, who prior to starting BTB Capital was in the industry for over 15 years. And then we're located here in Campbell, California, which is in the middle of Silicon Valley. However, we do have a national reach. In fact, we have many customers on the East Coast and the Northwest, all over the United States. Because finance can sometimes be considered a little bit of a dry business, we like to have fun, and I wanted to show you a little bit about our personality here. Clearly, we like to have a good time, and we've also been branded as America's friendliest factor. So let's talk a little bit about what factoring actually is. You know, invoice factoring is basically selling your invoices at a discount. A lot of companies will offer their customers what's called a 2 net 10 discount, which means if you pay our invoice in 10 days, you can take 2% right off the top. Well, that's exactly what factoring is. You offer the factor the same kind of discount to provide the cash flow to you today. So factoring is really not a form of debt or even a form of equity where you're selling part of your company. You're just giving your customers a discount, just like you would in a sale, but you're using that difference to fund the transaction to get your cash flow now. Keep in mind that not every business will have the ability or the profit margins to absorb the factor's fees. Factoring fees are typically in the 2 to 3% per month range, which if you're in a business which is on very tight margins can make factoring difficult. So as a factoring broker, you certainly want to seek out companies that have higher profit margins, and we'll talk a little bit about which industries are preferable a little bit later in the presentation. So let's talk a little bit about how factoring works. It's really as easy as 1, 2, 3. Of course, the first step is to have your customer continue to invoice their clients just like they always have. Once your customer invoices their client, they should send a copy of that invoice to us. Once we receive a copy of their invoice, we'll go ahead and send them the money. It's called an advance, and typically that's 80% of the invoice amount. We'll wire to their account or get it to them however they prefer. And then we basically wait to get paid. We wait the typical 30, 60, 90 days. In the meantime, your client has the money. They have the ability to use that money for payroll, to buy more materials, whatever their needs are, and we wait to get paid. When the check finally arrives, we'll return the reserve. That's the amount that we held back less our fee. So very simple, 1, 2, 3. It's important to make sure that you understand how factoring works, so we'll do another slide with just a little bit more detail. So first of all, your customer, or we'll call it your client in this example, represented on the far left side of the screen, your client will continue to operate their business as they always have. They'll continue to invoice their client, with the exception that in their remittance address, they should use BTB's P.O. Box so that the checks actually come to B2B. But other than that, they'll send a copy of the invoice to the client, they'll send a copy of the invoice to BTB, and we'll begin to process it for them. Once we've had a chance to process the invoice, we will advance your client 80% of the invoice amount. Again, that's a typical amount. It may vary, but 80% is fairly standard. They have the money now to make payroll, buy more materials, whatever they need to operate their business. We then wait to get paid. Eventually, the customer will pay BTB. The check arrives. It gets entered into our online system. Your client can log on 24 hours a day to check on the status of payments they're expecting to receive. And then we return, of course, the 20% we held back less our invoice factoring fee. And again, that fee is somewhere between 2 and 3% of the invoice amount. So what makes a good client for factoring? Well, pretty much any type of business that sells to other businesses and has higher profit margins, which includes almost all types of staffing companies, service providers, manufacturers, recruiters, all of the typical companies that work on higher margins. There's a couple industries that BTB cannot service, and those would be general contractors. We can help construction subcontractors, but not general contractors. And we also cannot do anything that has to do with medical billing for procedures. So in other words, we can't factor receivables for dentists or for doctors or psychiatrists, that kind of thing, or anything that bills Medicare or Medicaid. Pretty much anything else is fair game. So how do I get paid? This is the important part for brokers. So brokers are entered into the database at the time we enter the prospect ourselves, so it's tracked all the way through our system. Every time that BTB earns a fee, your commission is calculated, and then the commission checks are sent out at the end of the month. So let's go ahead and calculate the commission for a sale. So let's just, for this example, assume that one of your clients does about $200,000 in sales and that we fund all the invoices. In this example, our rate will be 2.5%. So here's how the commission would be calculated. So if we did $200,000 in invoices and all of those invoices were outstanding for 30 days, this is the way the commission would be calculated. First of all, we take the $200,000 in invoice values, multiply it by the fee, which would be 2.5% in this case, which comes out to $5,000. That $5,000 then would be multiplied by your commission rate, in this case 10%, which means you would earn $500 per month for that one client. Now that's per month every month. So if you continue to add one client per month at about the same size, 200,000 in invoices, you could earn $500 times 12, which would be about $6,000 in monthly additional income. Here's some other interesting data that you may find useful as you sell to your prospects. First of all, the contract that we sign with your customer will be for 12 months. That's good because you'll get paid for the entire time that your client is one of our customers. Most of our clients renew for another 12 months, which means our average client will stay for 2 years and you'll get paid for that entire time. Some things that make us different from other factoring companies. First of all, we allow spot factoring, and what that means is we do not require that your customer factor all their invoices for all their customers. They can pick and choose an invoice from different customers, or they can factor all the invoices from one customer but not another. So they have complete flexibility in deciding how and when to factor. Second, there's no application fee. Many factoring companies will require a deposit up front, and that can be difficult for companies that are already having cash flow problems. So we don't require an upfront application fee. Our due diligence charges will come out of the very first funding. Also, there's no minimum monthly fees, which means that if a client factors for a couple months and then doesn't factor for a couple months, there's no charge and no monthly minimum during that time in which they do not have any of our funds. So what are some of the qualification criteria that you should look for while talking to and speaking to prospects? First of all, we cannot fund sole proprietorships. Your customer must be a corporation or an LLC that sells to other businesses or government agencies. It needs to be business to business. It can't be business to consumer. Also, we recommend that you find customers that are doing at least $20,000 per month in sales. Our sweet spot is between $250,000 and $750,000 per month, but we can certainly handle deals up to $3 million per month, and we can do deals smaller than $20,000 per month if there looks like there's growth possibilities. Also, the most important thing, no matter what type or what size of customer you bring to BTB Capital, your customer must have creditworthy customers. At the end of the day, what's most important to us is that the folks that are receiving the invoices have the ability to pay those invoices. So your client must have good customers. So here are some common questions we receive from our brokers. What if a client receives a check for a factored invoice? What should we do in that case? Well, the answer to that's pretty simple. We just ask that your client not cash the check, but just simply forward it along to us. We'll cash it because we've already funded that invoice. Another question is, how long does it take to get my client set up for a factoring credit line? And the answer to that's going to vary based upon several factors, like which state they're incorporated in, how many UCC filings they have if they already have a line of credit with a bank. But typically it'll take about 5 business days from start to finish to get your client set up. Sometimes it can happen quicker and sometimes it'll take longer. Another question that we get is, once they have been set up, how fast do they get their money? Well, we typically can get the money out the same day we receive the invoices if it's a client that we're familiar with and a customer of your client that we're familiar with, or sometimes it takes an extra business day. So usually the money goes out very, very fast. Well, that's the end of our presentation for our BTB Capital Broker Program. I'd invite you to send us an email or give us a call if you have any further questions, and we certainly look forward to working with you and wish you the best of success.